Welcome back to Miss Teacher Tube with Janice Leong. Today we're going to be looking at some math concepts that are difficult for students to completely comprehend as they move from one grade to another. Starting in grade 2, students learn about the tens and ones place value. And by the end of the year, we're getting them used to that 100 place value, but it's not part of the grade 2 curriculum just yet. They need to know their numbers up to 100, but they don't need to know place value to 100. Our focus in grade 2 is on tens and ones. It is a very difficult concept to grasp, so we tend to spend a lot of time on it. And this is something I would review with students throughout the year, because at different points of the year, they're really mentally ready to take on more and more information. It becomes more and more meaningful to them as the year progresses. So just to review what tens and ones are, tens, I've color-coded them red, and my ones, I've color-coded them green. So 47 has 4 tens and 7 ones. We also look at writing numbers in expanded form, although we don't use that technical word for it just yet. Even though I introduce it to my students, they're not expected to understand and retain the expanded form vocabulary, but they are expected to know that 47 is 40 plus 7. 4 tens is 40, 7 ones is 7, put together 40 plus 7 is 47. They are expected to be able to take that number apart into tens and ones, put it back together into tens and ones, and understand that 47 has 4 tens and 7 ones. Now, if they're just getting used to understanding what place value concepts are, just seeing a 9 by itself can sometimes be quite confusing because 9 has no tens. And it's interesting to get used to the concept of just because there's nothing, we don't need to use a 0 in front of the number. If there's nothing there, there's just nothing. So 9 is just 9 ones, no tens. 14 is 1 10, 4 ones. It's also important to go through the hundreds chart with students and have them notice the patterning. Now, I've of course circled my skip counting by 2 and 5. It's good to review that on a regular basis with students, and skip counting by 10. But it's important for them to see the patterns as you move down the 100 chart. So as we're adding 10, your tens place value increases by 1. So every time you move down the chart, it gets 10 bigger. So they can actually see that pattern, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, growing in the tens, but the ones place value stays the same. So it's interesting to look at the different patterns in these charts and just to pose to students, what do they see in the chart? Can they point out patterns? It's interesting what students will find in 100 charts without even being prompted, because of course our math system is nothing but patterns. And the sooner they see these patterns and these relationships between numbers, the easier the math gets and the faster they're able to do it. Welcome back. We're going to continue looking at the number 47, and we're going to look at the number 47 in many different ways. First, we've looked at the number 47 in terms of how many tens, how many ones in the number as it's represented this way, but we want a really good understanding for students. So we look at numbers in a variety of different ways. So 47 can be looked at this way, and in a minute, I'm going to show you a number of different ways we want students to view that. We want them to have a very thorough knowledge of how place value works. Okay, this is another way to look at place value. So this is your standard place value map that you would see in elementary schools. Of course, in grade 2, we're not looking at thousands. We start to look at 100 by the end of the year, but not really in terms of place value. But we will spend a lot of time looking at tens and ones and building numbers with them. So this is a 10 rod. It's basically a 10. We build our 10s with these, and we use these for regrouping as well. These little guys are ones, or units, and we use these to build the ones for each number that we create. So students will spend some time first exploring and building numbers on the place value chart. So it says we're working with the number 47. This is the number 47, so 10, 20, 30, 40, and 7 ones. So 4 10s, 7 ones, this equals 40, that equals 7, put it together and you get 47. Now sometimes we also write the digits underneath the columns with a whiteboard marker to give them a feeling of what it takes to build that number. However, before we go into students regrouping when they're adding and subtracting, we look at what it takes to regroup a number, because we can build a number many different ways. So we start out saying, well, what's another way we can make 47? It takes a little while before students get this idea, but if you take one of these 10s and trade it in for 10 ones, you're still going to have 47. Here we go. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 ones. You're still going to have 47. You're just going to have way more ones if you build the number that way. So then you have 3 10s, 10, 20, 30, and you have 17 ones. So 10, 17, put that all together, and you're going to get 47, and so on and so on. So I mean, we can take this apart and regroup and build more ones until really we have 47 ones and no 10s left. So we spend a lot of time building numbers and taking numbers apart this way to really understand that there's many ways to create and represent a number. So it gives them way more flexible thinking around numbers. Now we're going to take this concept after working on a place value map for a little while, and we're going to start drawing it out. So in my next little segment of the video, you'll see a line drawn for 10s and dots drawn for ones. So we're slowly getting them to a more symbolic representation of this concept. Okay. At this point in building the numbers, we've done a lot of work with these concrete materials, and we've built many different numbers with these concrete materials in many different ways, playing around with 10s and ones. When we're done working with that and getting used to that concept, then we're moving to drawing it out. Basically what we want to do is move our students from being so reliant on concrete things to more and more symbolic representation of the number. So we're going to look at 47 a number of different ways. So 47 has 4 10s, so we draw lines for 10s and dots for ones. So 4 10s, 7 ones equals 40 plus 7, which equals 47. Now it's also important to talk to students about the equal sign. Equals doesn't mean and the answer is. Equals means this side is the same as that side. So you could have a very long equation on one side of an equal sign and a very long equation on the other side of an equal sign, and they are equal as long as the answer to both those equations is the same. So I really stress equals means the same. So looking at it a number of different ways, so 47 can be represented with 3 10s, 17 ones, so 30 plus 17 is 47. Or 2 10s, 27 ones, 20 plus 27 is 47. Or 1 10, 37 ones, 10 plus 37 is 47. Or no 10s, all ones. So we're going to have 0 plus 47 is 47. So it's interesting for them to play around with that same number and realize the same number can be written many, many different ways, but it still is the same number. It's just represented differently. Once students develop that kind of flexible thinking around numbers, all of a sudden the number system and regrouping makes a lot of sense to them. And it's not just carrying a 1 over and learning the algorithm and not knowing what that means. It's very important that not only are they good at using the algorithm, but every time they carry something over or they move 10 back to the 1 so they can take away properly, they understand that they're moving tens and ones back and forth. They're not just moving a digit. So we really want them to have a solid understanding of what it is to build the number. In the next little episode, we'll look not really at place value anymore, but we're going to look at it in terms of addition and subtraction with regrouping. We'll see you next time.